Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the exciting second installment of our new feature this week in Jihad. And as I explained last week, in case you may have missed that classic episode, this is a new service that I am going to provide. I hope it will become a bit more uh, slick and sophisticated as time. As time goes by. But the idea is that people don't read so much, and certainly I've noticed that as somebody who types all day. Um, and so the information is going to come to you on video. And also, if you go to Patreon, I've opened a Patreon account that is designed to ultimately raise money for equipment and for a studio set in a property that used to be a TV studio, and that I hope once will be again. But in any case, in the meantime, I am coming to you this week from the road. This is a very exciting week for me, ladies and gentlemen, if you'll pardon a personal note, because it's the launch week for The History of Jihad, From Muhammad to ISIS, came out Tuesday, and it's doing far better than anyone expected. In fact, I did the rounds of a few shows in New York a few days ago, and a lot of them I was sort of amazed, and I wrote to the publisher and said, "People are not having the book. I'm going to these studios, and they don't have the book." And it turns out it's because they ran out, because it's selling much better than expected. So I'm very grateful to you for that if you ordered it, and I will be grateful to you in the future for that if you order it in the future. This is a book that, it's always a little bit embarrassing to be so self-referential and say buy my book and all that. But even if I hadn't written this book, I'd be very excited about it. This is the first and only book that covers all of jihad activity in chronological narrative treatment. And those of you, I see somebody said I pre-ordered from Amazon UK. I asked about that also to the publisher, and they told me the UK, even though they put the release date at the 7th, like the US did, they actually get the book shipped, and it takes a while for them to get there. But they will be there, and so I do hope to be able to be hearing from you soon that you have gotten it if you pre-ordered, and I thank you for that. Meanwhile, you can go to jihadwatch.org, and I was on Prager yesterday, had a very good talk with Prager, and yeah, I see somebody saying Glenn Beck. I'm scheduled to be on the Glenn Beck show next week, I believe it is, discussing all this, and several others as well that you can find that are not behind subscription, and some that are, that you could subscribe to, Will Cow in particular, and some others. In any case, the big news, of course, this week, as you doubtless already know, is the New Mexico story. And this is a story with many facets. It's really quite an astonishing story. The initial reports were that the police raided this compound, and they found these 11 starving children and a cache of weapons. And the police rather laconically said, these people seem to be Muslim extremists. But of course, the establishment media, with its job one always being make sure that nobody thinks ill of Islam, they didn't report on the Islamic aspect. It was a child abuse story in the mainstream media. NBC, ABC, CBS did not report about the Islamic aspect of it at all. And what's that now? There are no comments possible under the video stream. It needs to be activated. Oh goodness, I'm sorry. I don't have the slightest idea how to do that. I'll see if I can figure it out, or I'll ask David Wood. I apologize for being technologically useless, but it's true. I do know how to type. Actually, I don't know how to type. I type with index fingers, but I still have a couple of those. Anyway, New Mexico. So in the first place, the first aspect of the story is that the jihad angle is ignored. And so you have the you have people saying that this is nothing to do with Islam when it manifestly does. And it just gets worse from here. It spirals out. Of course, you've probably heard that the man in the compound, who was the father of the boy who was missing, who was later found dead, the 4-year-old boy, Abdul Ghani Wahaj. Abdul Ghani Wahaj is the son of Siraj Wahaj, who is in turn the son of another man named Siraj Wahaj. And Siraj Wahaj is a very prominent imam. Linda Sarsour calls him her mentor. He is on the circuit for speaking in mosques and Islamic institutions all over the country. And the Imam Siraj Wahaj is very well respected. John Esposito calls him his good friend, and he was the first imam to give a prayer in the House of Representatives. But he also has said that if Muslims in the United States were only clever politically, they could replace the US Constitution with a caliphate. And he has also been connected to the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. And this is something that, he himself, there's a Facebook video of the Imam Siraj Wahaj, the grandfather of the child who died, who was found dead. He was named a potential unindicted co-conspirator in the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. And that's a very ambiguous, it's a very strange title. And he dismisses it in this Facebook video that I posted at Jihad Watch earlier today. And that's reasonable, I think, for him to dismiss it because he wasn't charged with anything. It's interesting to note, I thought was kind of appalled but not surprised. He also says he wasn't investigated. Like, wait, just more craziness from law enforcement. But the deal is that what he was doing was he was taking the blind sheikh, Omar Abdulrahman, who was the mastermind of the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. He was taking him all around mosques in New York and New Jersey before the bombing and touting him as a respected imam. And so it's perfectly reasonable, I think, to investigate whether he had foreknowledge of that this was going to happen, whether he had some idea, whether he had involvement, but apparently he wasn't even investigated. Nonetheless, the other question is, what does he think of his friend doing that? And I don't know if he's ever been asked, because the establishment media being what it is, they would never challenge an imam on such a question. But you got to wonder, okay, look, if he is a friend of the blind sheikh, he's taking him to mosques all over New York and New Jersey. The blind sheikh conspires to blow up the World Trade Center. What does Siraj Wahaj think of that? Does he think, oh no, I'm a moderate Muslim and my friend has gone astray? Does he denounce? I've never heard him denounce him. I don't know. Maybe he has. Maybe if some of you know, or you can find Siraj Wahaj saying that what the blind sheikh did was a terrible thing, that would be great. Maybe he did. But I've been doing this a lot of years. I've never seen it. And so what I wonder is this Wahaj family a jihad crime family? And are they, where did young Siraj, the father of the boy who died, where did young Siraj Wahaj get his understanding of Islam? Here's a guy stockpiling weapons in the middle of nowhere in New Mexico. And he is training these children to be school shooters. All this has to do with his Islamic views. And his Islamic views are obviously involving warfare against unbelievers and obeying the Quranic injunction to kill them wherever you find them and all that. So, okay, where did Siraj Wahaj Jr. learn this? Siraj ibn Wahaj. Where did he learn this? Did he learn it from his dad? Does his dad? I mean, his dad has already said that there must be a mental disorder here, and I think, okay, yes, you have to. You do need a caliph to declare offensive jihad. Yeah, it just caught my eye there. Anyway, what does his father think of his Islam? Where did he go astray? These are the kinds of questions that the establishment media ought to be asking. These are the kinds of questions that Siraj Wahhaj, the Imam, ought to be asking right now. What did you teach your boy? Where did he go wrong? What's your evidence that he has a mental disorder? Did you teach him that he should wage war against unbelievers? If you didn't, who did? Did you have any arguments with him about this? I mean, it seems to me, I ask you, is that not common sense? Do you think that it's reasonable to ask him questions like that? And why wasn't he asked questions like that? Anyway, no, there's no formal diagnosis of nothing. Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, the only reason why anybody is saying that Siraj ibn Wahhaj, had a mental disorder is because his father is suggesting it. But his father, the one who was the friend of the blind sheikh, well, there's prima facie evidence that he is somebody who thinks that jihad warfare against unbelievers is a good thing. Because he's talking about imposing the caliphate, he's talking about the need to subjugate the non-Muslims, because that's what the caliphate involves. So why are his views so different? What should be the indication? What is the indication that Siraj Wahhaj, the Imam, thinks differently from his son? Where is his denunciation of the blind sheikh? Anyway, these questions we will never hear the answer to from the establishment media. It will never happen. Oh, and also, that's another thing. Paul Sperry, the great investigative journalist. So that's another thing. Paul Sperry, the great investigative journalist, has said that Siraj ibn Wahhaj was for 13 years on the radar of law enforcement, and they were worried that he was going to get into jihad activity. 13 years there, and he's able to go to the middle of nowhere in New Mexico and start this compound and stockpile weapons and train children to do school shootings. 13 years. Sometimes I wonder if this terror watch list, and I actually don't have any indication that Siraj ibn Wahhaj was on the terror watch list, but they were watching him, according to Sperry, for 13 years. But I wonder sometimes if this terror watch list is just a sort of a TV program. You sit and the agents, they sit and watch, and maybe they eat some popcorn or something, but they don't do anything. And that seems to be the situation. But you got this guy who is 13 years on the radar of law enforcement for fear of terrorist activity. You have him stockpiling weapons. You have his father being connected to the mastermind of the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. It does seem to me to start to point in one particular direction, does it not to you? But of course, what Siraj Wahhaj, the Imam, is saying about that is predictable. I bet that you already know what it is if you have not even been looking at the news, and that is that the coverage is Islamophobic, and that Fox News in particular, the reporters, he said, they hate Islam, they hate Muslims, and so they're trying to make this tragedy of his grandson dying under mysterious circumstances and his son being arrested. They're trying to make it into something having to do with Islam. Now, the police right from the beginning said that these people were Muslim extremists, so-called, and the evidence since then about the school shootings and so on, this does seem to be an indication of jihad activity. So what Siraj Wahhaj, the Imam, seems to be engaged in is a little bit of the game of war is deceit. And the idea that you deceive the unbelievers so as to render them continually ignorant and complacent regarding the threat that is posed. And if they're ignorant and complacent, then obviously they're not going to take any effective action, and you don't have to be concerned about them impeding your plans or hindering you from doing what you're going to do. War is deceit, of course, is a statement of Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam, who allowed for lying in the circumstances of warfare, as well as he allowed a husband to lie to his wife in yet another example of the misogyny that is inherent in Islamic law. The many, many ways in which the Sharia, it puts women at a disadvantage. Do I seriously think every single Muslim is an evil, despicable being? Oh, come on, be serious. Human nature is everywhere the same. What we're talking about, however, is an ideology that does indeed drive many people to do evil and despicable things. And I think that Siraj ibn Wahhaj is one of those people. And, you know, he started out like everybody else. And it was what he was taught that drove him ultimately to this compound in New Mexico and the stockpiling of weapons and the planning of a school shooting and starving children and all these things. The directives in the book that he thinks is dictated by that you should kill them wherever you find them, that you should fight to subjugate the directives in the book that he thinks is dictated by that you should kill them wherever you find them, that you should fight to subjugate the people of the book and make them pay the jizya with willing submission, kill themselves. That is that is the goal of jihad activity. That is the purpose of jihad, to make, which is the Quran chapter 8, make it so